Welcome back to Whispers in the Dark. Tonight's story is a slow burning descent into grief, possession, obsession, and the terrible things people will do when they convince themselves that love has returned from the grave. Turn off the lights, listen closely, and make sure you are not alone in the dark, because sometimes the dead do not come back. Sometimes we drag them back, and what answers us is something much worse. Now let's begin. The first time Marcus Vane saw the woman in the black veil, he was standing in the rain outside St. Bartholomew Cemetery, watching his wife's coffin sink into the earth. The cemetery sat on the northern edge of Greyhaven, where the city's old brick mansions gave way to tangled woodland and steep, muddy roads that twisted like broken fingers through the hills. It was late October, and the rain had been falling since dawn. It clung to the mourners' coats, filled the fresh grave with black water, and turned every face into a blurred, ghostly mask. Marcus had not spoken since the funeral began. He stood beneath a crooked elm tree in a charcoal wool coat, his dark hair soaked flat against his skull, his jaw clenched so tightly that a thin muscle jumped beneath his cheek. He was 42 years old, handsome in a sharp and severe way, with deep-set eyes that had once made strangers trust him and now made them look away. He owned half the restoration firms in the city, had rebuilt churches, theaters, and mansions from ruin, and yet he could do nothing with the ruin inside his own chest. His wife, Evelyn, had been 35 when she died. No one said murdered in front of him. They used soft words, careful words, words like tragedy and accident and awful misfortune. But Marcus knew what had happened. Evelyn had been taken from their home 3 nights before their 10th anniversary. The police found no sign of forced entry. The nursery window was open, though they had no children. A ransom note had been left on the bed, written in shaky block letters, demanding money and silence. Marcus paid. Of course he paid. He emptied accounts, sold rare antiques, called in favors from men who hated him and men who feared him. But the kidnappers gave the wrong place for the exchange. Or so the police said. The money vanished. Evelyn did not return. 2 days later, a fisherman found her body in the canal beneath the old slaughterhouse district, wrapped in a hotel bedsheet and tied with piano wire. Her face had been ruined so badly that her mother fainted during identification. Marcus identified her by the small crescent scar at the base of her thumb, where she had cut herself on a champagne flute the night he proposed. After that, the world narrowed. The funeral became sound without meaning. Rain on umbrellas, dirt striking wood, priests muttering about mercy. Then Marcus saw the woman. She stood beyond the iron fence, among a row of marble angels blackened by age. She wore a long black coat, black gloves, and a veil that covered her face from brow to chin. She was too far away for him to see her features clearly, but something in her posture made his breath catch. The tilt of her head, the narrowness of her shoulders, the way her left hand lifted toward her throat when the priest said Evelyn's name. Evelyn had done that when she was nervous. Marcus stepped away from the grave. His brother Daniel caught his arm. Daniel was 2 years younger, broader, warmer, the kind of man who shook hands with both palms and remembered waiters' names. His face was pale and swollen from crying. "Marcus," Daniel whispered, "where are you going?" Marcus shook him off. The woman beyond the fence turned, as if she had heard him move. For a single heartbeat, she faced him across the rain and graves. Then she walked into the trees. Marcus followed. He moved past mourners, past his mother-in-law, past the priest, through wet grass and over sunken stones. Someone called his name. He ignored it. The woman's black coat flickered between the trunks ahead. He reached the fence, found the side gate rusted open, and plunged into the cemetery's older section. Here the graves were cracked and leaning. Names had been eaten by moss. Stone cherubs had lost noses, hands, entire faces. The woman moved quickly, but never seemed to run. Her veil floated behind her like smoke. "Wait," Marcus called. She did not stop. He slipped in the mud and struck his knee against a headstone. Pain flashed up his leg. When he looked again, she was gone. Only rain remained, threading through bare branches and tapping the marble lids of the dead. Marcus stood among the graves, chest heaving. Then he heard a whisper behind him. "Do not bring her back." He turned. An old groundskeeper stood beneath a yew tree, holding a spade with both hands. His skin was the color of candle wax, and one of his eyes was filmed white. He wore a rubber raincoat slick with mud. "What did you say?" Marcus asked. The old man's good eye fixed on him. "You heard me." Marcus stepped toward him. "Who was that woman?" The groundskeeper looked toward the trees. "No woman went through here. I saw her." The old man's mouth trembled. Grief shows people many things. Marcus seized the front of the old man's raincoat. "Who was she?" The groundskeeper smelled of wet wool, tobacco, and fresh earth. He did not fight. He only leaned close enough for Marcus to see rainwater trembling on his lower lashes. "There are things that wear the beloved shape," he said softly. "They wait for an invitation. They wait for want. You are full of want, Mr. Vane. So full it is leaking out of you." Marcus released him as if burned. By the time Daniel found him, the old man was gone. At the reception, Marcus drank nothing, ate nothing, and spoke only once. "Did you see her?" Daniel stood in the dining room of Marcus's house, beside a table of untouched food. The house was called Blackwater House. It was a tall, narrow mansion of gray stone and black iron balconies, built by a judge who had hanged himself in the attic in 1891. Marcus bought it as a wedding gift for Evelyn and restored every room himself. The floors were dark oak. The windows were tall and arched. The walls were covered in portraits of dead strangers, because Evelyn loved old faces and imagined stories for each of them. Now the house looked like a museum of grief. White lilies covered every surface. Their scent was thick and sickly, like sweetness laid over rot. "See who?" Daniel asked. "The woman at the cemetery." Daniel's face changed carefully, the way faces do when someone decides not to show concern too quickly. "I saw a lot of people. She looked like Evelyn." Daniel exhaled. "Marcus, do not say my name like that. I am saying it because I love you." Marcus turned toward the dining room window. Rain streaked the glass, making the garden lamps smear into pale yellow wounds. "She was there," he said. Daniel came closer. "You buried your wife today. Your mind is trying to survive something impossible." Marcus laughed once. It had no humor in it. "My mind is the only thing in this room that still works." Daniel looked at the floor. That was the first time Marcus hated him. Not fully, not clearly, but a small black seed of hatred settled in him, cold and patient. That night, after the last mourner left, Marcus went upstairs to Evelyn's room. He had not slept in their bedroom since the kidnapping. He could not bear the indentation on her pillow, the perfume bottle on the vanity, the silk dressing gown folded over the chair. He pushed open the door and stood in the threshold, listening. The room smelled faintly of lavender and dust. He entered. Moonlight lay across the bed. The sheets had been changed after the police removed their evidence tape, but Marcus still saw her everywhere. Evelyn brushing her hair in front of the mirror. Evelyn laughing with her knees tucked beneath her. Evelyn turning in sleep, murmuring nonsense against his shoulder. On the vanity sat a framed photograph from Venice, taken the year after their wedding. Evelyn stood on a bridge in a cream dress, smiling at someone outside the frame. The wind had lifted her dark hair from her neck. She looked alive in a way the dead never should. Marcus picked up the photograph. Behind him, floorboards creaked. He turned. The wardrobe door was open. He was certain it had been closed. Inside hung Evelyn's dresses in a row. Black velvet, blue satin, white linen, red silk. The red dress moved slightly, though no window was open. Marcus approached. Something dripped inside the wardrobe. At first, he thought rain had leaked from the ceiling. Then the smell hit him. Copper salt, the sour warmth of blood. A drop struck the wardrobe floor. Then another. Marcus reached between the dresses and parted them. The back wall of the wardrobe was slick with blood. It ran downward in thick, trembling ropes, soaking the wallpaper, pooling along the baseboard. In the wet center, written by a finger or a claw, were 3 words. "I remember you." Marcus stumbled back. His heel caught the rug, and he fell hard against the bed. The room went black. When he woke, Daniel was shaking him. "Marcus, Marcus, look at me." Morning light filled the room. The wardrobe was open. There was no blood. Daniel's wife, Claire, stood behind him, one hand covering her mouth. She was a slight woman with gold-rimmed glasses and anxious eyes. Behind her hovered 2 police officers. Marcus pushed himself upright. "It was there," he said. Daniel looked exhausted. "What was?" "The blood." The officers exchanged a glance. Marcus stood and walked to the wardrobe. The back wall was clean, dry, ordinary. Evelyn's dresses hung still and silent. He touched the wallpaper. Nothing. One of the officers cleared his throat. "We found the front door open, Mr. Vane. Your brother says you called him just after 3 in the morning." "I did not call anyone." Daniel held up his phone. "You did." Marcus stared at the screen. There it was, his number, 3:17 in the morning. Duration 16 seconds. Daniel swallowed. "You kept saying she is in the walls." Marcus looked slowly at Evelyn's dresses. Nobody believed him. By the end of the week, Marcus stopped answering the phone. He sent the staff away, dismissed the housekeeper, ignored letters, and let food rot in the kitchen. He lived inside Blackwater House like a man inside a sealed coffin, moving from room to room in his dead wife's slippers, because he wanted to hear the sound she used to make on the floors. At night, the house changed. It breathed. Pipes knocked in the walls with the slow rhythm of a heart. Doors opened just enough to show blackness beyond them. The mirrors clouded when Marcus passed, though the air was cold. Once, while standing in the hall outside Evelyn's room, he heard a woman humming from the nursery. They had never used the nursery. Evelyn decorated it anyway during their 4th year of marriage, after the first miscarriage. She painted the walls pale green and hung tiny silver stars from the ceiling. After the 2nd miscarriage, she locked the door and never went in again. After the 3rd, Marcus found her sitting on the nursery floor at dawn, holding one of the unworn baby shoes to her chest. Now the door was open. Marcus stood outside it, listening to the humming. It was Evelyn's song, not a real song. Just a melody she invented when she cooked, when she painted, when she watered the dead plants she refused to throw away. He stepped inside. The nursery smelled of milk gone sour. The little crib stood in the center of the room, beneath its drifting stars. A rocking chair moved gently in the corner. Back and forth, something lay in the crib. Marcus moved closer, every nerve screaming. He looked down. Inside was a bundle, wrapped in yellowed lace. It twitched. A tiny hand slid from the cloth. Gray skin, black fingernails, too many joints. Marcus gagged and backed away. The bundle turned toward him. It had no face, only a wet red hollow where a face should have been, pulsing like the inside of a throat. From the hollow came Evelyn's voice. "Why did you let me die?" Marcus screamed. He ran from the nursery, slammed the door, and dragged a cabinet in front of it. The humming continued through the wood, tender and patient. By morning, the nursery door was locked. There was no cabinet in the hall. He found it downstairs in the dining room, exactly where it had always been. That afternoon, Daniel came to the house with a doctor. Marcus refused to let them in. Daniel stood on the front steps beneath a gray sky, speaking through the locked door. "You need help." Marcus watched him through the narrow side window. The doctor was a tall woman with silver hair and a calm mouth. She carried a leather case. Claire sat in the car at the curb, wringing her hands. "Go away," Marcus said. Daniel pressed his palm to the glass. "You are not sleeping. You are not eating. You are seeing things. I saw her at the funeral. You saw someone in the rain. She came here. No one came here." Marcus laughed softly. "You know more than you should." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means you were the only one who knew where I put the ransom money." Daniel went still. For a moment, even the rain seemed to pause. Then he said, "You are grieving. I am going to pretend you did not say that." Marcus leaned closer to the glass. "Did you kill her?" Daniel's face twisted, not with guilt, but with pain. "My God, Marcus, did you?" Daniel stepped back. The doctor spoke for the first time. "Mr. Vane, grief can become dangerous when it has nowhere to go." Marcus smiled. "It has somewhere to go." He closed the curtain. That night, he dreamed of the canal. He stood barefoot on the bank beneath the old slaughterhouse, where rusted hooks still hung from iron rails and weeds grew through the cracked loading dock. The water below was black and slow. Something floated there, wrapped in a sheet. Marcus climbed down the slick stones. The sheet drifted closer. He reached for it. The body rolled over. It was Daniel. His brother's mouth had been sewn shut with black thread. His eyes were gone. In their place were 2 wedding rings pushed deep into the sockets, gleaming wetly. Daniel's stitched mouth moved. Beneath the thread, he whispered, "She is not Evelyn." Marcus woke, with mud on his feet. Real mud. It caked his soles and smeared the white sheets. Beneath his fingernails was black river silt. His trousers were wet to the knee. On his pillow lay a silver button. He knew it at once. It came from the coat of the veiled woman at the cemetery. Marcus held it in his palm until dawn. Over the next month, he searched for her. He walked the cemetery every day. He hired private investigators. He visited hotels, churches, theaters, cafes, old boarding houses, and the hospital where Evelyn had once volunteered. He carried the silver button in a velvet pouch like a relic. No one knew the woman. No one had seen her. Then, on the 39th day after Evelyn's funeral, Marcus found her in a church. St. Agnes stood in the oldest quarter of Greyhaven, squeezed between a burned bookshop and a shuttered tailor. The church had been closed for repairs for 3 years, but Marcus still had keys because his company had once bid on the restoration. He entered at dusk, drawn by a candle flickering behind the stained glass. Inside, the air smelled of wax, mildew, and mouse droppings. Dust lay thick on the pews. Saints watched from cracked windows, their colored faces bleeding blue and red light across the stone. A woman knelt before the altar. She wore a black coat, no veil. Her hair was dark, pinned loosely at the back of her neck. Her shoulders were narrow. Her left hand rested against her throat. Marcus stopped breathing. "Evelyn," he whispered. The woman turned. She was not Evelyn, and she was. Her face was younger, perhaps 28 or 30. Her eyes were darker. Her mouth was fuller. There was a small mole beneath her right eye that Evelyn never had. But the shape of her cheek, the slope of her neck, the sadness in her expression, all of it struck Marcus with such force that he grabbed the back of a pew to stay upright. "I am sorry," she said. Her voice was soft, trembling slightly. "I did not know anyone came here." Marcus could not speak. She stood. "Are you all right? What is your name?" She hesitated. "Lydia." "Lydia what?" "Marrow." The name meant nothing. Marcus walked toward her, as if approaching a wild animal. "You were at the cemetery." She lowered her eyes. "Yes." "Why?" "I knew your wife." That stopped him. "How?" Lydia looked toward the altar. A single candle burned there, though no one had lit it. "She came to the shelter where I worked. Sometimes." She brought clothes, books, blankets. She was kind to me when not many people were. Marcus studied her. "Why did you run?" "Because you looked at me, like you were seeing a ghost." He laughed, and the sound broke apart in his throat. "I was." Lydia flinched. For a moment, shame cut through the fog in Marcus's mind. She was not Evelyn. She was a stranger in a ruined church, frightened by a grieving man. But then she lifted her hand to her throat again. The gesture slid into him like a knife. He invited her to coffee. She refused. He invited her again the next day. She refused less firmly. By the third week, she agreed. Lydia Marrow lived in a narrow apartment above a pharmacy, in a neighborhood where laundry hung between buildings and alley cats fought over fish bones. She had grown up in foster homes, worked at a women's shelter, and painted small religious icons on pieces of scrap wood. She had no family, no husband, no real friends that Marcus could find. She wore simple dresses, often gray or blue, and always a small silver cross at her throat. She disliked being touched unexpectedly. She never ate meat. She had a nervous habit of looking over her shoulder when she heard sirens. She told Marcus these things slowly, over many meetings, as if each fact were something she had to unwrap from barbed wire. Marcus listened to every word. He bought her tea. He walked her home. He repaired the broken lock on her building door. He sent flowers, then apologized when she said they made her uncomfortable. He learned the exact shade of fear in her eyes and taught himself how not to cause it. But beneath all his gentleness, the obsession grew. It grew like mold behind walls. He began to see Evelyn and Lydia more often than Lydia herself. When Lydia smiled, Evelyn smiled through her. When Lydia turned away, Evelyn was hiding. When Lydia said his name, he heard his wife calling from a deep room underground. He kept a journal. In it, he wrote comparisons. Evelyn preferred jasmine tea. Lydia prefers black tea with honey. But both hold the cup with two hands. Evelyn slept on her left side. Unknown about Lydia, Evelyn had a scar on her thumb. Need to check Lydia. He hated himself for that sentence. Then he underlined it. One evening, while Lydia washed dishes in his kitchen after dinner, Marcus saw the back of her neck, exposed where her hair had come loose. At the base of it was a crescent scar, small, pale, perfect, the same shape as Evelyn's scar. The plate Marcus was holding slipped from his hand and shattered. Lydia jumped. What happened? Marcus stared at her neck. How did you get that scar? She touched it. I do not know. I have had it since I was little. Turn around. What? Turn around. She did slowly. Marcus stepped closer. Show me your hand. Lydia backed away. Marcus, you are frightening me. Your hand. No. He reached for her. She slapped him. The sound cracked through the kitchen. For a second, both of them stood frozen. Then Lydia grabbed her coat and left. Marcus did not follow. He stood among the broken pieces of plate, breathing hard, while something inside the walls began to laugh. After Lydia stopped answering his calls, the haunting worsened. Black Waterhouse became hostile. Rot appeared in corners overnight, black and wet, spreading across wallpaper in vein-like patterns. Flies gathered on the inside of windows, though every window was shut. At midnight, footsteps crossed the ceiling above Marcus's bed, slow and dragging, though the attic was locked. Once, while shaving, he saw Evelyn behind him in the mirror, not as she had been in life, as she had been in death. Her skull was visible through torn cheek flesh. One eye had collapsed into a red socket. Her lips were split to the gums, revealing teeth slick with canal mud. Piano wire circled her neck so tightly that it had sunk halfway through the skin. Her head leaned at an impossible angle. Marcus turned, razor in hand. The bathroom was empty. In the mirror, she remained. She lifted one broken finger and pressed it to the glass from the other side. The mirror cracked. Blood seeped through the crack and ran down the sink. Marcus whispered, "Tell me what you want." Evelyn smiled. Her jaw unhinged with a wet pop. From the black pit of her mouth came Lydia's voice. "Bring me home." The next morning, Marcus went to Daniel. Daniel lived with Claire in a bright brick townhouse near the university, the kind with flower boxes and polished brass numbers. Marcus had not been there since before the funeral. He arrived unshaven, eyes red, coat wrinkled, smelling faintly of mildew. Daniel opened the door and froze. "Marcus, I need money." Daniel blinked. "What?" "I need to buy something." "What are you buying?" "A ring." Daniel's face hardened. "No, you do not know what I am going to ask. You are going to ask that poor woman to marry you." Marcus said nothing. Daniel stepped outside and closed the door behind him. She is not Evelyn. Marcus smiled faintly. You keep saying that because it is true. Truth is not always visible at first. Daniel looked sick. Listen to yourself. I have seen things. You have hallucinated things. The house knows her. The house is old. It makes noises. Evelyn speaks through the mirrors. Daniel's anger broke. Evelyn is dead. Marcus struck him. Daniel stumbled backward, blood appearing at his lip. The door opened behind him. Claire gasped. For a moment, Marcus saw himself in the polished brass number beside the door. A gaunt man, hollow-eyed, rain-soaked though it was not raining. A stranger wearing his grief like a second skin. Daniel touched his bleeding mouth. I should have told you before, he said quietly. Marcus went still. Told me what? Claire whispered, Daniel, no. Daniel looked at her, then back at Marcus. The ransom exchange was not wrong. Marcus's vision narrowed. What? Daniel swallowed. The police changed the plan. They thought they could catch the kidnappers. They told me not to tell you because you were too unstable, and they needed someone who could act normal. I gave them the location after you gave me the money. Marcus stared at him. You knew. Daniel's face crumpled. I thought I was helping. You changed the location. The police did. You knew where she was supposed to come back to me, and you changed it. Marcus, please. You killed her. No. You killed her. No, I was trying to save her. Marcus lunged. Claire screamed as the brothers crashed against the door. Marcus drove his fist into Daniel's face once, twice, 3 times. Daniel did not fight back at first. He tried to hold Marcus by the shoulders, tried to say his name. Marcus grabbed his brother's head and slammed it into the brick wall. The sound was dull and final. Daniel slid down the wall, leaving a smear of blood. Claire fell to her knees beside him. Marcus looked at his hands. His knuckles were split. Daniel's blood filled the cracks. Claire raised her face toward him. You monster. Marcus backed away. Daniel survived, but something between the brothers did not. The police came to Blackwater House that night. Marcus did not answer the door. They rang, knocked, called, and finally left after speaking to his lawyer. No charges were pressed. Daniel claimed he slipped. Everyone knew it was a lie, but the Vane family had money, and money had always known how to close mouths. Marcus sat in Evelyn's room until dawn, holding her wedding ring. At sunrise, Lydia arrived. He found her standing in the entrance hall, though he had not heard the door open. She wore a dark blue dress and no coat. Her hair was wet, dripping onto the marble floor. Her face was pale. Lydia. She looked around the hall. This house, she whispered. I dreamed of it. Marcus descended the stairs slowly. You came back. I tried not to. She turned toward him. There were shadows beneath her eyes. I have been dreaming of your wife. Marcus clutched the railing. What did she say? Lydia's lips trembled. She said you still have her room ready. Marcus began to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically. Tears simply spilled down his face. Lydia stepped closer. I do not know what is happening to me. He reached for her hand. This time she allowed it. Her skin was ice cold. From that day on, Lydia lived at Blackwater House. Not officially. Not at first. She kept her apartment. She told herself she was only staying a few nights because the nightmares had frightened her, and Marcus seemed to understand. But Marcus gave her Evelyn's room. Marcus filled the closet with clothes in her size, all chosen to resemble things Evelyn had worn. Marcus replaced her silver cross with Evelyn's pearl necklace while Lydia slept. When Lydia protested, he wept. When she threatened to leave, the house intervened. The front door would not open. Her shoes vanished. Her apartment key appeared inside a locked music box in the attic. On the one morning she managed to reach the street, she found a dead pigeon on the doorstep with its chest split open, and her name written beside it in blood. She stayed. Fear bound her first, then pity, then something darker. Lydia began to change. Her voice softened into Evelyn's cadence. She started humming the little invented song. She asked for jasmine tea, though she had always hated it. Once, Marcus found her in the nursery, standing beneath the silver stars, both hands resting on her belly. There was supposed to be a child, she said. Marcus gripped the doorway. You remember. Lydia blinked. Remember what? You said there was supposed to be a child. She looked confused, then frightened. I do not know why I said that. At night, she slept in Evelyn's bed, while Marcus sat in the chair beside her, watching. Sometimes Lydia spoke in her sleep. Do not cut the wire. The water is cold. Daniel knows. Marcus wrote everything down. He stopped thinking of Lydia as a woman. She became a vessel, a door, a half-opened grave through which Evelyn might crawl home if only he loved her hard enough. The house became more alive with every passing day. In the dining room, meat spoiled within minutes of being served, swelling with pale worms beneath silver lids. In the library, books fell open to pages about burial rites, revenants, and saints whose bodies refused to rot. The portraits on the walls wept dark streaks from their painted eyes. One portrait, a stern woman in a green dress, turned her head during dinner and watched Lydia until she sobbed. Worst of all was the cellar. Blackwater House had a deep cellar built into the hill, older than the mansion above it. Its stone walls sweated constantly. Iron hooks hung from beams, though Marcus never learned why. Evelyn had hated it and refused to go down there. Now Lydia woke each morning with dirt under her nails. Marcus followed her one night. At 3:15, Lydia rose from bed without opening her eyes. She wore one of Evelyn's white nightgowns. Her bare feet made no sound on the stairs. Marcus followed with a candle, keeping his distance. She crossed the kitchen and opened the cellar door. The smell that rose from below nearly made him retch. Rotten water, spoiled meat, old blood. Lydia descended. Marcus followed. The candle flame shrank to a blue bead. At the bottom, Lydia stood in the center of the cellar, facing the far wall. Her hair hung down her back, her head tilted as though listening to someone beneath the floor. Then she began to dig, not with tools, with her hands. Her nails scraped the packed earth between stones. Skin split, blood welled. She dug faster, breathing in short, excited gasps. Marcus set the candle down and grabbed her wrists. Stop. Lydia's eyes opened. They were not Lydia's eyes. They were milky white, filmed like the groundskeeper's blind eye. She smiled. Almost found me. Marcus released her. The wall behind her bulged. Stone groaned outward. Mortar cracked. Something wet pressed from between the stones, black and glistening. Fingers emerged first, long and skinned, nails broken backward. Then a face pushed through the wall, flattened by the pressure, features sliding under translucent flesh. Evelyn, not alive, not restored, not whole. Her corpse squeezed through the stone as if the wall were a birth canal, bones cracking, shoulders folding inward, hair plastered to her ruined skull. Canal mud spilled from her mouth. Her chest was caved in. Her stomach had split open, and something pale and rope-like dragged behind her. Marcus fell to his knees. My love. The corpse turned its single remaining eye toward him. Lydia screamed. The thing in the wall vanished. The cellar was empty, except for Lydia, sobbing, her hands torn raw. After that, Lydia begged Marcus to let her leave. He locked her in Evelyn's room. He told himself it was for her protection. He told himself the thing in the wall was Evelyn trying to return, and Lydia's fear was preventing the miracle. He told himself love required patience. Love required sacrifice. Love required locked doors and sedatives crushed into tea. 3 days passed. Lydia weakened. She stopped screaming. She sat by the window and watched the garden. Marcus brought food on silver trays. She rarely ate. Her wrists were bruised from trying to force the door. Her hair hung limp around her face. The resemblance to Evelyn became less beautiful and more terrible, like a portrait rotting in its frame. On the 4th night, Marcus entered with a velvet box. Inside was Evelyn's wedding ring. Lydia looked at it and began to shake. No. Marcus knelt before her. She wants this. Marcus, please. Say yes. You are sick. His face hardened. Say yes. Lydia backed against the wall. I am not your wife. The room went cold. The vanity mirror clouded. In the silver fog, words appeared. Make her remember. Marcus rose. Lydia looked from him to the mirror. Who wrote that? Marcus's voice became calm. You did. She ran for the door. He caught her by the hair. She screamed as he dragged her back. The sound filled the room, raw and animal. She clawed at his hands, tearing skin from his wrist. He threw her onto the bed and pinned her down with his knee. The ring gleamed between his fingers. Evelyn fought too, he whispered. When she was frightened, Lydia spat in his face. Marcus struck her. The room fell silent. He stared at the red mark blooming across her cheek. Something in him recoiled, but another part, deeper and hungrier, leaned forward. He forced the ring onto her finger. The instant it slid past her knuckle, Black Waterhouse screamed. Every window shattered at once. Glass exploded inward through the mansion in glittering storms. Doors slammed open and shut. The walls split from ceiling to floor. The lilies from Evelyn's funeral, long dead and thrown away, burst from the wallpaper, their white petals pulsing like soft lungs. A wind rushed through the room, carrying the stink of canal water and grave earth. Lydia arched on the bed. Her mouth opened wide. Evelyn's humming poured out. Then Lydia's body lifted from the mattress. Not far, just enough that her hair hung beneath her head and her fingers curled like claws. Marcus backed away, horrified and ecstatic. Evelyn. Lydia's head turned toward him. When she spoke, two voices came from her throat. Lydia's, thin and pleading. Evelyn's, wet and deep. You left me in the dark. Marcus shook his head. No, I paid. I did everything. You brought another. To bring you home. To feed me. The windows continued to howl. Lydia's skin rippled. Beneath it, something moved. Her cheek split open along an invisible seam, not deeply, but enough for blood to slide down her jaw. Her eyes rolled white. The ring on her finger tightened until the skin bulged around it. Marcus reached for her. She dropped from the air and seized his throat. Her strength was impossible. She slammed him into the wall. The back of his head struck plaster. Stars burst in his vision. Lydia leaned close, but the face inches from his was no longer hers. It flickered. Lydia. Evelyn, Lydia. Evelyn dead. Evelyn alive. Evelyn with her jaw broken. Evelyn on their wedding day. Evelyn bloated with canal water. Lydia sobbing beneath all of it. You wanted a ghost, the thing said. So be haunted. Then it released him and collapsed. By morning, Lydia remembered nothing. The ring would not come off. Marcus tried soap, oil, thread, pliers. Lydia screamed as he pulled. Her finger blackened. The ring had sunk into her flesh as though the skin were growing over it. The haunting no longer hid. Faces appeared in soup. Tiny hands knocked from inside walls. The nursery crib rocked so violently it cracked its own legs. Marcus found a trail of baby teeth leading from the cellar to his bedroom. In the bath, the water turned black and filled with strands of Evelyn's hair. Once, in the hall, he saw Daniel standing at the far end with his mouth sewn shut, though Daniel was still alive across town. Marcus called him. Daniel answered after a long silence. What do you want? I need to know what happened. You know what happened. No, Marcus whispered. There is more. Daniel said nothing. Marcus gripped the phone. Tell me. When Daniel finally spoke, his voice sounded hollow. The police found one of them. One of who? The men who took Evelyn. He hanged himself in custody before trial. Marcus closed his eyes. What did he say? Daniel breathed shakily. He said they never meant to kill her. Marcus waited. He said someone else came to the slaughterhouse. The walls around Marcus seemed to lean closer. Who? He did not know. A man in a black coat. He paid them to leave, said he would return Evelyn himself. Marcus's mouth went dry. That is not in the report. No. Why? Because the officer who took the statement died that night. Cut his own throat in his bathtub. The tape disappeared. The man hanged himself. Everyone wanted the case closed. Marcus looked toward the stairs. Above him, Evelyn's room door creaked open. Daniel continued. There was one more thing. What? The kidnapper said Evelyn knew the man. Marcus whispered no. He said she called him by name. What name? Daniel did not answer. Daniel. His brother's voice broke. She called him Marcus. The phone slipped from Marcus's hand. From upstairs came Lydia's scream. He ran. The bedroom door was open. Blood streaked the floorboards. Lydia was gone. A trail led to the attic. Marcus followed, heart hammering. The attic stairs had been sealed years ago because Evelyn hated the drafts. Now the door stood open, and cold air poured, down like breath from a tomb. He climbed. The attic was vast and low-ceilinged, filled with covered furniture, old trunks, broken mirrors, and rolled carpets. Rain tapped the roof. At the far end, beneath a circular window, Lydia sat tied to a chair with strips of torn bedsheet. Marcus did not remember tying her. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Do not come closer. I did not do this. You did. No. You were talking to yourself. You kept calling me Evelyn. Then you carried me up here. Marcus looked at his hands. There was blood under his nails. Behind Lydia, one of the covered mirrors shifted. The sheet slid off. In the mirror stood Marcus. Not as he was now, but cleaner, younger, wearing the black coat from the kidnapper's story. His reflected face smiled. Marcus stepped backward. The reflection did not. Lydia sobbed. What is that? The Marcus in the mirror lifted a hand and pressed it to the glass from inside. Real Marcus felt pressure against his own palm, though he had not moved. Then memories struck him, not like thoughts, like hooks tearing upward through flesh. He remembered the ransom note. He remembered writing it. He remembered Evelyn saying she wanted to leave him, not for another man, not for scandal, because she was afraid of him, because his love had become a room with no doors, because after the miscarriages, he had begun watching her sleep, asking where she went during the day, accusing her of replacing their unborn children with strangers at the shelter. She had packed a suitcase. She had called Daniel. Marcus remembered finding the suitcase. He remembered hearing men to frighten her. Only frighten her. Make her understand that the world outside him was unsafe. Then the men got greedy. Then Evelyn fought. Then blood. Then panic. Then the slaughterhouse. He remembered arriving in the black coat, seeing Evelyn tied to a chair, her face bruised, eyes blazing with hatred. "You did this," she had said. "I did it for us. You are a monster." He remembered putting his hands around her throat, not to kill her, only to silence her, only to stop the words, only until she understood. The piano wire came later. The canal came later. The ruined face came later, when he realized beauty made identification too easy and guilt too human. Marcus fell to his knees in the attic. "No." The reflection smiled wider. Lydia whispered, "What did you do?" Marcus looked at her. For the first time, he saw Lydia. Not Evelyn, not a vessel, not a door. A terrified woman tied to a chair in his attic, bleeding because of him. He crawled toward her. "I am sorry." The mirror cracked. A voice came from it. His own voice. "Do not ruin this." The attic darkened. Every covered object began to tremble. Sheets lifted from furniture, revealing chairs stacked like bones, trunks swollen with damp, dolls with cracked porcelain heads. The circular window blackened until it reflected not the storm outside, but the canal beneath the slaughterhouse. Something rose in that black glass. Evelyn, all of her, dead and dripping and smiling with Marcus's smile. Lydia screamed as the ropes around her chair tightened by themselves. They cut into her arms. Blood ran down to her wrists. Marcus grabbed at the knots, but they writhed like living things. The mirror Marcus stepped through the glass, not breaking it, passing through as if through water. He stood in the attic, identical to Marcus, but wrong in tiny ways. His eyes were too bright, his smile too tender. His shadow moved against the wall, though he stood still. "You made me," the double said. Marcus backed away. "You made me every time you said love and meant ownership. Every time you said grief and meant hunger. Every time you looked at a woman and saw only what you had lost." Lydia sobbed, "Please." The double turned to her. "She will do." Marcus lunged at him. They crashed into a stack of trunks. The double was cold and strong, his flesh slick like something pulled from water. Marcus punched him, but his fist sank slightly into the double's cheek, leaving an indentation that filled slowly. The double laughed. Below them, the house shook. In the nursery, the faceless bundle began to cry. In the cellar, stones fell from the wall. In Evelyn's room, every dress tore itself from the wardrobe and slithered across the floor like flayed skins. Marcus grabbed a shard of broken mirror and drove it into the double's neck. Black water gushed out. The double screamed with Marcus's voice. Lydia's ropes loosened. "Run," Marcus shouted. She tore free and stumbled toward the stairs. The double seized Marcus by the face. Its fingers pushed into his cheeks. Skin split beneath the pressure. Marcus smelled canal mud and his wife's perfume. "You cannot kill what you are," it hissed. Marcus looked past it to Lydia. She had reached the stair door. For one moment, he thought she would run. Instead, she turned back. The ring on her finger pulsed black. Lydia's face hardened. She grabbed an iron fireplace poker from a pile of junk and drove it into the double's back. The point burst through its chest. The double shrieked. The sound cracked beams, split trunks, and sent dolls tumbling from shelves. Marcus rolled away as black water sprayed across the floor, hissing where it landed. Lydia pulled the poker free. The double turned. Its face changed. No longer Marcus. Evelyn, beautiful Evelyn, eyes full of tears. "Help me," she whispered. Marcus froze. Lydia did not. She struck Evelyn's face with the poker. The skull caved in. The illusion tore open. Behind Evelyn's face was something ancient and pale, with no eyes and too many teeth packed in wet rows down its throat. It unfolded from the shape it had worn, limbs lengthening, spine cracking upward, skin peeling away in strips. It had been Marcus. It had been Evelyn. It had been grief. It had been hunger. Now it was only itself. The attic filled with the smell of open graves. The thing crawled across the ceiling, joints bending backward. Lydia swung again, but it caught the poker in its mouth and bit through the iron. Sparks flashed between its teeth. Marcus grabbed Lydia's hand and pulled her toward the stairs. They ran. Behind them, the thing followed, not walking, but flowing from wall to wall, dragging broken mirror light with it. Its claws tore grooves through plaster. It whispered in voices Marcus knew. Evelyn crying, Daniel begging, the old groundskeeper warning, the unborn children humming from the nursery. They reached the second floor. The hallway stretched impossibly long. Doors multiplied on both sides. Each door opened onto Evelyn's room. In every room, Evelyn sat on the bed, turning toward Marcus with a different ruined face. In one, her throat was wire cut. In another, her belly was swollen with canal water. In another, she held a faceless infant and rocked it against her chest. "Choose me," they whispered. Lydia pulled Marcus onward. At the stairs, Daniel stood below them. For one insane second, Marcus thought it was another apparition. But Daniel was real, bruised and bandaged, one eye swollen, a pistol shaking in his hand. Claire stood behind him, holding a flashlight. Daniel looked up. "Marcus." The thing dropped from the ceiling behind them. Daniel fired. The gunshot blew a chunk from its shoulder. Black sludge splattered the wall. It shrieked and retreated, folding itself into a doorway. Claire screamed, "Move." They fled down the stairs. The house fought them. The banister became slick with blood. Portraits spat teeth. The chandelier swung low and shattered against the wall, raining glass. From the dining room came the wet slap of meat crawling across the table. In the entrance hall, the marble floor cracked open, and dark water bubbled up from beneath the house. The front door was covered in fingernails, thousands of them, layered like scales, scratching from the inside. Daniel fired at the lock. Nothing. Lydia grabbed Marcus by the coat. The cellar, she said. It started there. Marcus understood. The thing had not come for Lydia first. It had been in Black Waterhouse all along, feeding on his grief, his guilt, his refusal to confess. The cellar wall, the earth beneath the stones, something buried there before the house, something that wore the faces of what people could not release. They ran to the kitchen. The cellar door stood open. Cold air rose from below, carrying Evelyn's song. Daniel gripped Marcus's arm. What is down there? Marcus looked at his brother, seeing the bruise on his face, the pain in his eyes. The years of love Marcus had twisted into suspicion. Everything I deserve. They descended. The cellar was flooded ankle deep with black water. It rippled, though no one moved. The far wall had collapsed completely, revealing a tunnel beyond, narrow and lined with roots that pulsed like veins. At its entrance lay objects that did not belong together. Evelyn's hairbrush, a child's shoe, Daniel's old watch, Lydia's silver cross, Marcus's wedding photograph, its faces scratched away. The thing waited in the tunnel. It wore Evelyn again, but badly. Her face sagged. Her limbs were too long beneath the torn wedding dress. Her mouth opened at the wrong angle. You came back, it said. Marcus stepped forward. Lydia grabbed him. No. He gently removed her hand. The ring on her finger had loosened. He slid it free. Her skin beneath was raw and blackened. Marcus turned to Daniel. I killed her. Daniel's face went blank. Claire made a small sound behind him. Marcus looked at Lydia. I killed Evelyn. I arranged the kidnapping because she was going to leave me. I murdered her when she knew. The cellar changed. The black water began to boil. The thing wearing Evelyn screamed. But this time, there was fear in it. Marcus continued, voice shaking but clear. I mutilated her body. I lied to everyone. I let my brother carry the guilt. I used grief as a mask because the truth was uglier than any ghost. The tunnel walls convulsed. Evelyn's shape split down the center. The thing inside thrashed, unable to hold the beloved face. Its pale limbs scraped the stones. Its mouth opened, showing rows and rows of human wedding rings embedded in its gums. Confession was starving it. Daniel raised the pistol. Marcus shook his head. No, it needs me. He took Evelyn's ring from his pocket and put it on his own finger beside his wedding band. The thing became still. Lydia whispered, Marcus, do not. For the first time in years, Marcus smiled without wanting anything. I am sorry, he said. Then he walked into the tunnel. The thing embraced him. Its arms wrapped around his back and sank into his flesh. Marcus gasped as ribs cracked. Its mouth closed over his shoulder, teeth sliding into muscle. Blood ran down his coat. He did not pull away. The tunnel began to collapse. Daniel shouted his name. Marcus looked back once. Behind Daniel, behind Claire, behind Lydia. He saw Evelyn standing at the foot of the cellar stairs. Not ruined, not accusing, not smiling, only watching. Then the thing dragged Marcus backward into the dark. The cellar wall folded, shut like a wound. Black Waterhouse exhaled. For 3 seconds, there was silence. Then the mansion began to die. Walls cracked, beams snapped, windows burst outward. Daniel, Claire, and Lydia ran up the cellar stairs as the kitchen ceiling collapsed behind them. They reached the entrance hall. The fingernails had fallen from the front door and lay scattered across the marble like dirty shells. Daniel kicked the door open. They escaped into dawn. Behind them, Black Waterhouse caved inward, not like a building falling, like a body curling around pain. The roof sank. The chimneys broke. The walls folded toward the center. Dust rose in a great gray cloud, carrying the scent of lilies, canal mud, and smoke. When the police searched the ruins, they found no bodies. Not Marcus, not Evelyn, whose grave was later discovered empty. In the cellar, beneath the collapsed stones, they found an older chamber no one knew existed. Its walls were carved with names, hundreds of them, some from decades past, some from centuries. Men and women who had vanished from Greyhaven after losing someone they loved too much, or too wrongly, or not enough. At the center of the chamber stood a mirror. It was unbroken. No one could explain how it survived the collapse. Daniel ordered it destroyed. The workmen refused after one of them saw his dead mother waving from the glass. So the city sealed the chamber with concrete and built nothing on the land where Black Waterhouse had stood. Weeds grew there, then trees, then wild roses with thorns long as needles and petals, so white they looked almost like bone. Lydia left Greyhaven within a month. She cut her hair short. She stopped painting icons. She never married. She kept the scar on her ring finger covered with a bandage for the rest of her life, though doctors told her the wound had healed. Years later, she wrote Daniel a letter. In it, she said she sometimes woke to the smell of lilies. She said mirrors made her uneasy, especially old ones. She said that once, in a hotel in Lisbon, she heard Marcus Vane whispering from the bathroom sink, not begging, not threatening, only repeating the same words again and again beneath the running water. I remember you. Daniel burned the letter. He lived another 17 years. He became quieter with age, less warm, less willing to touch people. Every October, he visited Evelyn's grave, though there was nothing in it. Every October, he found a fresh white lily on the stone before he arrived. On the 17th October, He brought a hammer to the cemetery. He did not know why. He only knew he had dreamed of the sealed chamber beneath Blackwater House. And in the dream, someone was knocking from inside the mirror. Not Marcus, not Evelyn, Lydia. But Lydia had died 3 months earlier in a small seaside town, peacefully, according to the letter from her solicitor. Daniel had attended no funeral. He had sent no flowers. Some wounds do not close simply because the people who made them are gone. At St. Bartholomew Cemetery, rain fell as it had on the day Evelyn was buried. Daniel stood before her empty grave, hammer hanging from one hand. A woman in a black veil stood beyond the iron fence. Daniel's breath caught. She lifted her left hand to her throat. Then she turned and walked into the trees. Daniel followed. Of course he followed. That is how it begins. Not with evil. Not always. Sometimes it begins with love curdled into need. Sometimes with grief sharpened into a key. Sometimes with a face in the rain that looks enough like the dead to make a living man forget the difference. Daniel passed through the rusted side gate into the old cemetery, where the stones leaned and the angels had no faces. The woman moved ahead of him between the trees. Her black veil fluttered. Her footsteps made no sound. "Lydia," he called. She stopped. Slowly she turned. Daniel raised the hammer. The veil lifted by itself. Beneath it was not Lydia, not Evelyn, not Marcus. It was Daniel. His own face stared back at him, pale and swollen, eyes filled with black water, mouth stitched shut with piano wire. The thing smiled through the stitches. Behind Daniel, the old groundskeeper's voice whispered from the rain, "Do not bring her back." But Daniel had already taken one step closer. And beneath the soil, beneath the roots, beneath the sealed chamber where the mirror waited in perfect darkness, something heard the weight of his want and opened its eyes. Thank you for listening. If this story followed you into the dark, then perhaps it did what it came here to do. Some horrors do not chase us. Some simply wait until we call them by a familiar name. Before you leave, take one last look around your room. Notice the mirror. Notice the shadows behind you. Notice how quiet everything has become. And if you hear someone you loved whispering from the other side of the glass, do not answer. No matter how much you miss them, no matter how sweetly they say your name. Good night.
Whispers of a love so true, painting dreams of me and you. And I'll hold you close in this moment so divine. Whispers of the